Good. I'd call to order the October 2nd, 2025 Rider Experience and Operations Committee meeting. I am Rider Experience and Operations Committee Chair Christina Walker. Welcome everyone to the meeting, both in person and via Zoom. For board members joining via Zoom, please turn on your camera and state your name prior to making any comments or asking any questions so the public and your fellow committee members know who is speaking. Hunter, will you please call the roll?
Angela Burney.
Here.
Board Member Burney is present. Christine Frizzell. Board Member Frizzell, we do see that you are present. Hunter George.
Here.
Board Member George is present. Deshaun Quinn.
Here.
Board Member Quinn is present. Ed Prince. Pete Ron Reichbauer. Gurmai Zachalai. And Christina Walker.
Here.
And Madam Chair, a quorum of the committee is present at this time.
Great, thank you, Hunter. Just a really quick report from me. The committee will not be receiving a Rio Metrics performance presentation at today's meeting. The standard monthly Rio Metrics performance report is included in your meeting packet if you'd like to take a look at that. But that is all I have, so I will kick it over to our CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, good news on Federal Way. The Federal Link extension is through testing and on to pre-revenue operations. This week, trains are running continuously to validate that system performs as intended. We expect to start simulated service at the end of October, or by the end of October. On Eastlink, the Eastlink team has officially started systems integration testing on the I-90 floating bridge segment of the project. During this phase of testing, a single train with up to 4 cars will cross the bridge intermittently. I will keep the committee up to date as testing progresses. That is all I have today, Madam Chair. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you, CEO. Any questions from the committee? Comments? All right, we'll move on to public comment. The Rider Experience and Operations Committee welcomes public comment as an important part of the public process. Comments are received and considered by the committee in its deliberations. Hunter, what types of comments have we received for today's meeting?
Madam Chair, we have received written public comments, and then we have one person signed up in the Ruth Fisher boardroom in person. There are no comments via Zoom today.
Great, thank you. And just a note to committee members and the public, board members have received the written comments submitted before the meeting. And Hunter, I would welcome you to read the names and summaries of those written comments.
Yes, we received a comment from Jonathan Nerbass asking the committee to consider having Route 513 as a bi-directional route during weekday commuting hours to expand ridership towards and near Seaway Transit Center. From Gillian Gray, raising concerns for the unavailable restrooms at Linwood Station and requesting explanation for closures and plan towards reliable restroom access at Linwood and other high traffic stations. And from Anna, urging the committee to improve service disruptions on the one line while expressing its repeated delays have negatively impacted their job reliability, daily life, and overall trust in the system.
Great, thank you for that. And as always, following this meeting, the comments provided will be posted on the Sound Transit website so the public may view them. Before we get started on verbal public comment, I want to just review our ground rules for both in-person and virtual, but just in person today. Each commenter will have 2 minutes. Speakers should comment on the action they identified on the sign-up sheet and stay within the allotted time. All comments must be germane to the agenda items or items within the committee's purview. Speakers should not make introductory statements, derogatory remarks, profanity, or personal attacks not germane to an agenda item, statements related to a political campaign, or statements for or against a candidate or a ballot measure. Speakers should also not engage in conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of this meeting, including conduct that is not germane to the committee's work or agenda. This is the only warning speakers will receive. If these rules are not followed, I will ask for the microphone to be turned off. I appreciate your adherence to these rules. We will now take comments from people here in the Ruth Fisher boardroom based on the order in which they signed in to speak. Hunter.
Yes, our one person signed up for public comment in the Ruth Fisher boardroom is Alex Toole.
Yeah, please go ahead and come forward and we'll get one of these microphones moved so you can speak into it.
Good afternoon. This is Alex Toole and I am Patricia Toole. Alex, you can speak up whenever you're ready, but I'll summarize since we only have 2 minutes, if that's okay. I see you looking up, so that's a yes. Okay. So we just briefly wanted to say thank you because we are probably the only people that didn't know this, but we recently became aware of the bus rapid transit lane, the expansion along like through Lake Forest Park. Alex's condo is there. And so immediately I thought, how is that going to affect his access to his bus stop? Because he doesn't drive. So I reached out to Sound Transit's accessibility line, and I just want to say thank you because I got a person who connected me to her name was Allison. She didn't give me her last name, but her name is Allison. And she called us back right away, and she flagged that bus stop as being especially important to maintain pedestrian access during the construction. And I was just impressed enough that I wanted to say thank you for taking Alex's needs into account, because that'll be really important once construction starts. I think that's all we had to say. Yeah. So,
Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing your comments.
do you have any questions?
Nope. And we, not because we're not interested, but because during public comment, we don't take questions from the committee. But we really appreciate your sharing and please continue to let us know how we're doing.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. All right, Hunter, you said that's the only speaker in person today?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is all that we have for public comment today.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comment. We'll move on to our business items. We have 2 business items for today's agenda, one for committee final action and one for recommendation to the board. To start with, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of September 4th, 2025 Rio Committee.
So moved.
Second, Frizzell.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We'll move on to our next motion, which is for recommendation to the board. That's motion number M 2025-49. And we have Ben Marks, our Acting Service Operations Executive Director, and Martin Young, our Commuter Rail Operations Deputy Director, to provide a presentation on an amendment to the Sounder Amtrak Maintenance Agreement. Please go ahead. Whoops, sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair Walker and members of the committee. I am Martin Young, Deputy Director of Sounder Operations, and today we're asking the committee for a due pass recommendation to the board to amend the Amtrak Fleet Maintenance Agreement to extend the existing term through October 2026, set otherwise to expire at the end of next month. It was our intent to exercise one of the full year options in this agreement with some of the other changes that we've been contemplating. However, Amtrak staff in the last year has been unable to devote the resources necessary to work through several features of the agreement requested by Sound Transit prior to the deadline of the current term. The 11-month extension is within their budget authority without going to their board, which is planned for another amendment we would have next year, Amendment 9. Next slide, please. Okay, so next slide after that. So this chart is a snapshot of the history of the agreement and its amendments between Sound Transit and Amtrak. And as you can see, the green section depicts the requested extension. As previously stated, staff intend to return next year for exercising one of the options already present in the agreement and other contract enhancements. It's worth noting that ST2 included funds for a Sound Transit-owned maintenance facility in Lakewood. That project was put on hold but is still funded and planned as a future project unless something else happens. Next slide, please. This amendment continues Amtrak's maintenance of the existing Sounder fleet, including the 11 new CEM cars recently purchased from Alstom, some of which are expected to go into service within the next month or so. The major cost elements of the agreement include the baseline cost for daily maintenance, fuel, which makes up more than 22% of the total, shared facilities, spare parts and materials, as well as positive train control, support for special events, and incentive penalties for Amtrak performance. Next slide, please. As long as we're here before you today, we wanted to take a moment to provide you with the notice for a recognized need related to the Sounder fleet in looking to ensure optimal service performance. Sounder Asset Management is aware of a need for another locomotive identified some years ago, but getting closer in need and requiring some attention soon. Of the 14 locomotives owned by Sound Transit, we often are left without a spare when there are at least 3 locomotives either in preventative maintenance or repair. The need will become particularly acute as in a few years when the 3 locomotives that are owned, called the MP40 locomotives, will be required to go into their own overhaul. And that's a few years away, but it is a need coming up. Budget approval has been previously granted for a locomotive, although currently not enough for a new locomotive. It could pay for 1 or 2 compatible used locomotives if available, and if found to be within an expected price range. Although freight locomotives are plentiful, most domestic manufacturers stopped making passenger locomotives some years ago, creating a severe shortfall in the marketplace. This is being mentioned only to provide you with a heads up that we are thinking ahead of this need and may come back to you in the future with something more if a specific procurement opportunity and action becomes recommended. So that concludes our overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Martin. What questions does the committee have? Yeah, go ahead, Board Member Quinn.
Thank you for the presentation, and I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking to you about this, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. And how does the maintenance contract interface with the Sounder overhaul timeline?
Sure. So Sounder's car overhauls, that is a 6-year project. We expect to be shipping the first of the 58 classic cars within the next month. And so they're pretty much 2 independent timelines. Amtrak will continue to support our need to take some of those vehicles off-site. And this term will be 11 months. So about the time that this 11-month term ends, we will have Amtrak with the capacity labor-wise to be able to accommodate even more of the equipment we have that was reduced when the ridership went down.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? So just to make sure I just drill into this again, just to make sure I know what I'm signing, the agreement we're doing now gets us out to 2030 when we approve this?
Actually, this amendment is only for 11 months, and it will take us through October of 2026.
Thank you.
But we
Okay.
do have options existing in the agreement to take us out another 4 more years. And we expect to be before you in the future with something more definitive. The current requirement is Amendment 9 to follow this. In order to meet their board requirements, would likely be before you by springtime next year.
Okay, great. So when I'm looking at slide 3, with the timeline there, each of those options would be another board vote.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Glad that I clarified that. Appreciate it. It looks like no other questions. So thanks for coming in, and I will now ask Hunter to read the action into the record.
Motion number M 2025-49 is a motion of the Board of the Central Puget Sound Regional Transit Authority authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to execute an amendment to extend the existing commuter rail rolling stock maintenance agreement with the National Railroad Passenger Corporation for the continued maintenance of Sounder locomotives and cars, including the cost of fuel, and an amount not to exceed $29,253,120, including 5% contingency for a new total authorized agreement amount not to exceed $416,182,700.
Great, thank you, Hunter. And I will now entertain a motion to forward this action to the board with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Board Member George, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or final questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify. All those in favor of forwarding motion number M 2025-49 to the board with a due pass recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. All right, that is our last action item, but we do have three very important reports to the committee. So we're going to jump right into those. We're going to start with the 2026 service plan preview. And we have Emily Yasukuchi, our System and Service Planning Director, to provide the report. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Walker and board members, committee members. All right, let's talk about the 2026 service plan. This is one of my very favorite topics. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So we are here to both provide an overview of part one of the 2026 service plan, which is the rail part, and to preview part two, which is the ST Express plan, the draft service concepts. We will be beginning public engagement starting next week on these. So that's why we're here today. We are not requesting any action. This is for information only. Next slide, please. As a reminder of our approach and timeline, this year's service plan will set service levels in two parts, the rail plan or part one and the ST Express plan or part two. The rail component in kind of the top bar is only includes minor service changes that don't require board action and can be implemented as soon as the spring 2026 service change. The ST Express changes in the bottom bar will be shared publicly, as I said, starting next week and presented to the board for final approval in no later than March of 2026 for implementation in fall of 2026. Next slide, please. And you can skip to the next one. Okay, so for the rail service plan, on the Link Light Rail side, the only change included in the 2026 service plan would be to begin serving the Pinehurst station on the 1 and 2 lines. Trains will at that time arrive every 4 minutes between Linwood and downtown Seattle during peak periods and 5 to 8 minutes at other times. Service will operate as you know, between approximately 5 a.m. and 1 a.m., and the opening date on this one is to be determined. Next slide, please. On the Sounder side, the plan includes minor schedule adjustments in response to customer requests and to enhance opportunities for off-peak service. On the Sounder North Line, the first northbound train would depart 20 minutes earlier in the afternoon. Other trip times would be adjusted slightly. These changes are subject to approval from our operating partner, BNSF, but I will say we have been given no indication that this would not be approved. On the Sounder South Line, one of the afternoon round trips, we call them flip trains that go from basically in the afternoon, they start here, they go down south, they come back here and they run another southbound trip. So one of those, they're currently, they flip and turn around in Tacoma. It would be extended all the way to Lakewood and then from Lakewood back up to Seattle. So just providing a little bit more access and service to the folks between Tacoma and Lakewood. All right, next slide, please. Engagement on the Pinehurst station has been, on the construction side, conducted for the last couple of years. The name, there was engagement around the name, and that was adopted back in January of this year. And then over the summer, we just did a little bit of engagement, informational engagement about the station being included in the annual service plan. On the Sounder side, we did do a survey for a change that we are not actually recommended because we heard from customers based on that survey. This was related to morning service on the N line, that they preferred the current schedule to the one that we were contemplating. So not recommending implementation of that proposal. Next slide, please. And again, these are not major service changes as defined by Sound Transit policy, so no board action is required to implement these. All right, let's get into ST Express. Next slide, please. And let's go ahead to the next one. Okay, so the ST Express changes that I'm about to go over are responsive to efficient and effective deployment of operating resources, the 1 and 2 line openings, which will connect a whole lot more people to more places with fast, frequent, and high capacity link service. And of course, passenger needs that we gather both from public input and from evaluation of route performance. Next slide, please. So route level proposals are going to follow this slide, but at a very high level, our ST Express plan proposes discontinuing bus service in light rail corridors that doesn't offer substantial travel time benefits over Link. It proposes maintaining service where Link operates, but where a bus to rail or rail only option would introduce substantial travel time increases at most times of day. And it suggests adding overnight service from Seattle to the north, south, and east. All right, let's get into the proposals in more detail. Next slide, please. I will start in the North Corridor. I'm going to go over these corridor by corridor. Before I get into that, I will just draw your attention to the color key in the lower right corner, indicating the future state route type. So the dark blue represents our frequent all-day service that provides 15-minute or better service on weekdays and provides service 7 days a week. The lighter blue represents our all-day routes that operate at least every 30 minutes. The gray are our weekday peak-only routes, and the pink indicates a route that is discontinued in this proposal. So I'll start on the left with routes that are proposed for change. This we heard earlier in the customer, the first customer comment that Hunter read out was actually directly related to this one. So it's always nice when we hear about it and on the same day we talk about it in the meeting. Route 513 between Seaway Transit Center in Southwest Everett and Linwood City Center Station would begin operating in both directions. Currently, it only provides southbound service in the morning and northbound service in the afternoon. Running northbound in the morning will provide access to jobs in the Southwest Everett area, for which we have received numerous requests, including the one you heard today. Route 515 between Linwood and Seattle was a temporary route implemented when the 1 line extended to Linwood in 2024. That route was put in place to provide additional capacity because the 2 line was not yet running service up to Linwood. When that 2 line does provide service there, there will be 4 to 5 minute headways for most of the day between Linwood and Seattle, providing ample capacity and frequency for folks traveling between those 2 destinations. Route 522, which currently operates from Woodinville to Roosevelt Station in Seattle, would be rerouted to Shoreline South Station. This is a future stride corridor, so this move will continue to build the market for the S3 line in advance of its 2028 opening. King County Metro it does plan to implement service improvements in the areas that would no longer be served by the 522. Route 535 between Linwood and Bellevue, also a future stride line, would have improved Saturday service and new Sunday service. Currently, it's a 6-day-a-week route, so we would move to 7 days a week and continue to build the market for the S2 line, which is slated to open in 2029. Routes 510, 512, and 532 would not change under this proposal. Next slide, please. All right, in the East Corridor, including SR 520, I-90, and 405 South, Route 550 between Bellevue and Seattle via I-90, and Route 554 between Issaquah and Seattle via I-90 would be discontinued. And Route 556, which is currently a weekday peak-only service between Issaquah and the U District, would be shortened to the Bellevue Transit Center, rerouted to serve additional stops in Issaquah, and improved to an all-day frequent connection 7 days a week. As you may know, 550 and 554 are two of our highest ridership routes. The 2 line, when it opens across the lake, will provide high capacity, fast, frequent service, 20 plus hours a day, 7 days a week in this corridor, with frequent bus connections for those connecting to and from Issaquah on this proposed 556 change. Routes 542 and 545, the Redmond to Seattle service via 520 would not change, and then 560, which is our Bellevue West Seattle SeaTac, Bellevue to West Seattle via SeaTac, and 566 Auburn to Redmond peak weekday service would not change. All right, one more corridor to go through. Next slide, please. All right, in the I-5 South and SR 167 corridor. So Route 574, which currently provides service between Lakewood and SeaTac Airport, would be shortened to the Federal Way downtown station when Link is operating. That very early morning service before Link starts would still be provided all the way to the airport by bus. The frequency of daytime service would also be improved to 15 minutes a day to ensure a smooth connection and limited wait time for those folks who want to transfer and go between Lakewood and all the way to the airport. Route 580 between South Hill and Puyallup Station would be discontinued. Service is provided in that same corridor by Pierce Transit, and it's primarily a parking connection to the Sounder Station, and we have opened additional parking at Puyallup Station for Sounder riders. Route 586 between Tacoma and the U District would be discontinued. Passengers could take routes 590, 594, or 595 between Tacoma and downtown Seattle and transfer to the 1 line to reach the University of Washington and the U District. And this will actually provide some travel time decreases for those folks making that transfer between bus and Link, up to 20 minutes at the most congested times. There would be no changes to routes listed on the right side of the slide, 577 and 578, as well as all of the 590s listed there. Okay, one more service proposal slide. Next slide, please. All right, so we are proposing new overnight bus service along Link lines to enhance regional mobility. It would serve riders and destinations with non-traditional need, which I will note has been the most resilient ridership since the COVID pandemic. Hospital workers, airport workers, and other service workers, and just people with sort of non-traditional, not 9-to-5 schedules. Combined with Metro's late night network, 85% of Link station areas would be covered all day and all night if these routes are implemented. The 3 proposed routes are Everett to Seattle, Redmond to Seattle via Bellevue, and Lakewood to Seattle via Tacoma, Federal Way, and SeaTac. Service would operate from about midnight to 5 a.m., 7 days a week, and the schedule could be evaluated for additional service to support expansion of the Link overnight maintenance window. You'll hear a little bit more about that later on in the updates today. Service levels are in development with our operating partners, but we would anticipate headways no greater than 60 minutes and most likely closer to 30 minutes in most cases. Next slide, please. Okay, so Title VI equity analysis is required to adoption of major service changes. These help ensure that Sound Transit activities don't result in disparate impacts for minority populations and or represent a disproportionate burden on low-income populations. We have conducted the preliminary analysis of these proposals, both on an individual route level and a system level. So on the individual route level, some of the changes identified do have disparate impacts or disproportionate burden, and this is because we are proposing elimination of service. And whenever you eliminate service, you're going to identify an impact there. However, these are where the Link service would provide the same coverage, or combined between Link, ST Express, and our partner agency local service, same coverage for Link, better frequency, more capacity, and and competitive travel times. So we do feel that these findings would be fully mitigated by the addition of the link service. And that's why you see on the system-wide level, there are no findings identified. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk public engagement. Next slide. So we began the engagement for the ST Express proposals in the spring, asking about anticipated travel changes once the 1 and 2 line opens. One and 2 lines open. And we also asked about priorities around transit and transit connections. We received over 2,300 survey responses and almost 1,000 individual comments. I would say that our kind of key findings from the comments is that folks did have some anxiety around the possibility of shortening bus routes to truncate at link stations, just citing, additional travel time and inconvenience. Let's see, approximately 1/3 reported concerns about losing their current bus route. That link will help, but removal or significant decreases in bus service will impact them. And so we did use those comments in addition to board and other feedback we received to develop these proposals. All right, next, we'll talk about what we're about to do. Okay, so we have a robust engagement plan to gather feedback on these proposals. Our primary tool will be an online survey that will open up on Monday, and it will remain open through November 7th. We will host community open houses in each of the 3 corridors and attend community events to share information. We'll post details about the route proposals on the Sound Transit website. We'll have 75 shifts of staff ambassadors out at key stops and stations throughout the month. And we also have a variety of media engagement plan, including in-language media. Our materials have been translated into 7 languages. All right. Home stretch here. Next slide, please. Next slide. So our next steps. So we will prepare to implement these rail changes, including planning for passenger information and making sure folks are ready for those changes in the spring. Starting October 6th on Monday, we'll be sharing those draft changes and gathering feedback as just discussed for the ST Express piece. Using what we hear during this upcoming engagement, we'll update our bus proposals if needed and share how those changed in early 2026. And then we'll be back here with the ST Express part of the plan for consideration by March of 2026. And then again, changes that are approved by the board at that time will be implemented with the fall 2026 service change. All right, next slide, please. In addition to working on these near-term changes related to the upcoming light rail expansions, we identified the need for a network planning effort that will support the enterprise initiative. Through the network planning effort, we will revise the link service assumptions based on current travel patterns and the modified system expansion program that comes out of the enterprise initiative. We'll update the agency's service standards and performance measures to ensure clear guidance around how and when service is adjusted. And we'll end up with a multi-year plan covering service on all of Sound Transit's modes that's responsive to the updated system expansion program that meets all of our statutory requirements and remains affordable in the long term, very importantly. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I know that was a lot.
No, this is great. This is the stuff we want to talk about. So thank you, Emily. Great presentation, lots of good information, and already got some good questions. So go ahead, Board Member George.
Thank you. I think I have a compliment and I think 2 questions. First of all, Emily, I want to compliment the surgical approach that it feels like you took to all of this. Not a big blanket. We're just gonna if there's light rail in the vicinity, we're gonna end bus service. Like you guys were really thoughtful about how you approach this. So I appreciate that. I want to understand, I think, 2 things. If we could go to slide 6. on the Sounder commuter rail. On the S line changes, this feels like a bigger deal to me and so I'm trying to I just wanted to see if I'm right. Again, new guy trying to understand the whole system. There's not currently a northbound trip in the afternoon from Lakewood, right? This would be, we're actually, I think, if I understand this correctly, we're extending service somewhere where it currently isn't.
That is correct.
Okay.
It is a big deal.
Well,
Thank you.
it's a big deal.
I appreciate you pointing that out. Yeah, you're right.
That's really cool. I like the idea that we're going to be able to tell the community you've got an ability to go north from there that you haven't had before. So, okay, I wanted to confirm because I'm going to go tell my Lakewood friends this is a big deal. And I wanted to make sure that I was right. And then I was curious, which slide am I on? Slide 13. And it's more, I'm just interested, Emily, in hearing you maybe speak to this a little more. So we had obviously a lot of interest in the South Corridor here. So I'm interested in hearing on 550 and 554. Can you talk about what the engagement response was to this? Obviously, they're clearly getting light rail across the lake, and that should provide what everybody needs. Do we have a sense that people understand that and they agree, or is it a learning process? Do we expect a lot of pushback? I'm interested. Sort of, what was the engagement like on these two? I was really focused on ours, and I want to make sure that I'm thinking about impacts to other corridors. If that makes sense.
Sure. So this is actually going to be the first time that we're sharing specific route proposals. So starting on Monday is when we will begin sharing these specific route proposals. In the spring, I think a lot of people through various other engagement activities, we partnered with Metro on a couple of service restructure planning efforts, both for the East Side and for South King. And so through those engagement efforts, I think people were understanding that there were these possibilities of routes being discontinued when the two line opened. And so I think we did hear from people during those engagement activities. I would say that though, like we will look forward more now that Sound Transit is sharing our specific proposals that we are sort of have an implementation plan and timeline for. I'll be interested to hear what we do hear from folks there. The other thing I'll say about that is that I think it's kind of a unique situation that if these changes are approved by the board and move forward, we will have a learning period and a period of time where the bus service will still exist and trains will be running across the lake. And so I think it'll be really, that will be very informative to us, in addition to the public feedback, how people's behaviors may change. And I think for a lot of these folks, by the time the bus service implementation comes around, they may have already changed their habits and patterns and kind of be used to the new situation. So yeah, I think good opportunities for learning coming forward. But yeah, good question. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I agree. Hope I'm sure it will be a learning opportunity. I love the transition between the two because you're right. Hopefully, people will change their habits. Also, what I heard is it's possible my email will light up starting Monday, so we'll see what happens. So
yes, that's why we wanted to give you a heads
up. So thank you very much, and again, I appreciate the presentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Board Member George. Board Member Frizzell.
Oh, thank you for this presentation. It was really well laid out. I do have just, I think one question. As someone who doesn't ride public transportation much after 8 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock at night, the change of adding midnight to 5 a.m. Kind of perks me up and causes me to wonder if there's any security concerns and how we're going to be protecting our ridership and our drivers at such a late hour of the night, but it'll be of the morning.
Yep, great question. So this has been part of our conversations with the partner agencies as we have floated these ideas and seen it, are they ready and willing to operate these services? So that security, both of passengers and of operators, was a primary issue that they wanted to investigate, on their part and within their agencies to see if that was something that they could, feel confident about moving forward. And I would say that they have all, tentatively agreed that this is something that is doable. I think the work that remains to be done is to continue to work together with our operating partners, identify if there are any gaps in what current coverage exists, and then develop a plan on how to address that. So excellent question, and something that we're in conversation and will continue to be in conversation with our operating partners about.
All right, I have my community transit board meeting beginning at 3, so I'll have some pre-conversations with some people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Frizzell. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Board Member Quinn.
I just wanted to compliment my colleague, Mary Frizzell, because I had the same question. But I think a key component here also to overnight service is making sure that ridership stays up. And you talked about ambassadors. Were there other activities that we're going to use to make sure that we can have that consistent ridership? Because as you stated, a lot of frontline workers, a lot of hospital workers, a lot of people we depended upon during the pandemic. So is there other techniques or strategies that you actually have in place?
Yeah, so if the board decides to implement these when we come back for approval in the spring, that's when we really begin our engagement planning and figuring out how the best way to reach folks and make sure. And then through our annual our sort of regular service evaluation, we will be able to check in and see how ridership is doing and identify if there's a need for additional marketing or engagement with folks, just to make sure people know the service is out there and available for them. So, yeah. Great.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one other follow-up, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, just about how are we communicating the threshold when we kind of go out and have feedback to the public. To ultimately drive the decision. I know there's a whole bunch of technical information that goes into it, but how are we planning on communicating about, hey, we've reached the threshold. This is kind of the preferred choice. So I'm just wondering, have you kind of talked about how are you going to communicate about it? Just to provide some certainty for folks to say, hey, you got my response. I was very responsive, but I still didn't get my route or didn't save my route.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question and point. So a key part of the schedule in between this engagement period and when we bring things back to the board is our coming back to folks with, here's the results of the engagement. Here's the proposal that we're bringing to the board. It's not final until the board approves it. So there is still time after the initial engagement period to provide feedback to the board. And with that, there will be sort of an explanation of how the decision was made. So we heard this in our we'll give back, we will restate statistics that we get back from our survey, from our feedback period. We'll say, this is what we heard. And this is the proposal now. So yeah, again, there will still be opportunities for folks if they were in the group that wanted something not to change and we're still proposing change it, they will still have the opportunity to come in front of the board and submit that feedback. So yeah, very important part of the process, that feedback loop.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Just a really quick question from me. Looking at all of these, I know you all did a fair amount of culling of data to get to these places, and you talked about that a little bit. I didn't hear a conversation about travel times, and I know that I've asked that question before and gotten information about it. Particularly concerned about and looking at the 574. And my understanding is that while it will be a 2-seat ride, it will actually shorten the trip significantly for a rider from Tacoma to the airport. Can you talk about the travel time data and how that was used, and confirm confirm that I remember that right, specifically for the 574.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so we looked at both the scheduled travel times and observed travel times on the routes that are proposed for shortening or elimination, where a part or a whole of the route would be replaced by link service. That is part of the proposal. So, and between and when we looked at the actual run times, what we found is that there is generally a tremendous amount of variability in travel time via bus because they're stuck in the same traffic that everybody else is in. And so between, even like when comparing the scheduled travel times and the actual travel times for the routes that we have proposed to change, shorten, eliminate, we are finding up to 25 minutes of savings at the worst times to about, I would say, 10 minutes of additional travel time for some of the trips at some of the times. So yeah, so we did do that. And then we were looking at other changes. And when it kind of went above that about 10-minute mark is when we were thinking like, this is really, and that plus the ridership on those routes, like together, that's a lot of additional travel time kind of multiplied by the people. And so that's roughly, I mean, it's not an exact science, but that's roughly kind of where we said, all right, these routes are, should remain as fully bus routes, continuing all the way into, where they're currently serving. So is that, I feel like I just.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And just to follow up on that, as we launch into this fall outreach, the October, November, is that something that will be communicated to people when they're asked? Because if I see my route and it says it's proposed for being discontinued, I mean, right, my answer is no. But if I have some data that shows I'm going to have a safer, faster, more reliable route, that might change my answer. So how granular are we able to get the information to people before they take that survey?
Great question. It's not currently part of our engagement materials. We do have it. So I think a great next step would be to put that on our website in addition, just as there's lots of reference materials, and to include that on our website and make sure that people know about that. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, really looking forward to the new data, and thank you, as all my colleagues have said, thank you for the granular level here in getting this information to us. This is a big deal. It's a big shift in service. It's big, we've had big question marks on the south end on how people are going to be able to get to, Seattle, SeaTac, places that they have counted on for years. So, but great news on the Sounder. Excited about the proposal for the overnight service. So lots of good stuff here. And thank you for coming to Rio early and giving us the preview. So lots of work to do over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Our next report to the committee is the unplanned service disruptions update. We have Shankar Rajaram, our acting core infrastructure and asset management executive director, here to provide the report.
Good afternoon, Chair Walker and board members. Today, I'll be providing this committee with an update on 3 specific unplanned service disruption events in response to inquiries from board members Zahile, Balducci, Chair Walker, and several other board members. Next slide, please. This update focuses on ST's approach to understanding root causes on specific incidents related to surge arrestor failure at Marymoor Village, rail fractures in the DSTT, and wire damage in Redmond. We'll be adding more specificity to the high-level quarterly resilience report presented to this committee last month. We are treating these 3 specific service disruptions as symptoms of a larger system in need of immediate care, but in addition to immediate care, a system in need of holistic preventative health plan approach. Let's get into the details over the next 3 slides. Next slide, please. On July 13th, we experienced a surge arrestor failure at Marymoor Village. which was one of 4 surge arrestor failures on the 2 line during the months of July and August. The failures caused disruptions that lasted an hour on average from the moment the failure started to when normal operations were restored. Investigation into the root causes of the failure are ongoing with all potential factors identified, and they are under review. We have not conclusively identified the root cause, but expect to do so by the end of this year. In the meantime, to address the immediate need and avoid similar unplanned service disruptions in the near term, we are proactively monitoring and replacing surge arresters as needed. Because these failures occurred in a new territory where everything from equipment to utility power source are new and we are familiarizing with them, we are working on a holistic review of the failures. This review includes identifying and assessing all possible sources of surges, material testing of the surge arresters, and potentially identifying better performing surge arresters as replacement. We will complete our immediate care and data collection efforts by end of this year, and over the course of next year, we will develop a system-wide plan to mitigate this potential source of unplanned service disruptions. Next slide, please. Next is about the rail breaks in DSGT. We replaced broken rail in the DSGT over the weekend of June 21 to 22. Beginning on June 18th, riders were notified daily via service alerts that a bus bridge between Sodo and Capitol Hill stations would be in effect for the duration of service for both days. We suspect the root cause for this failure to be rail fatigue due to the age of the rail in the DSGT. While some of this is expected, in the past couple of years, we've experienced a steep increase in rail breaks that demanded a closer review. A deeper analysis revealed that rail breaks are concentrated in the older areas of the alignment in Tukwila and the DSGT. The failures have also occurred predominantly at locations where repair wells were done during the COVID years. We suspect workmanship quality issues due to human stress factors during the COVID years, and potentially a quality issue arising from the materials that were available in the market during that period. These materials are the well kits that we purchase. Another agency on the East Coast whom we discussed with, they use the same well kits from the same supplier during the same time frame and experienced similarly unusual high rate of rail breaks in their system. So as an immediate action, we have scheduled a complete scan of the rail on the link alignment using a new technology to identify the locations of wells and defects with the aim of fixing them by early 2026. The field work for scanning the rail is expected to start in a couple of weeks. For long-term reduction of rail breaks, we will increase the frequency of rail testing in 2026 and plan to use a data-driven approach to proactively fix minor fractures before they become rail breaks during service. For this, we have already started to enhance our interactive rail health monitoring database by integrating more information about our rail maintenance activities and the health condition for the entire link alignment. We have also given the database access to our maintenance team. Next slide, please. And finally, about the OCS entanglement in Redmond. This happened on June 8th at 5 p.m. And we did not resume normal operations for a couple of days. The entanglement of this OCS wire occurred due to tensioning issue at a location along the alignment, which had a unique OCS configuration called as midpoint anchor. The midpoint anchors are used in locations when additional wire supports are needed, such as when a track and OCS cross under a bridge. While these additional supports are important, they operate differently compared to the broader system and require special attention to ensure consistent and proper wire tension. To address this in the short term, we have already completed an inspection and retensioning as needed of all unique locations along the alignment and have established increased inspection frequencies. For the long term, We are interacting with the industry to explore technological solutions that have been implemented elsewhere in the US and abroad, so we can monitor the OCS wear and tension and proactively intervene if there are issues. We expect to start testing these new monitoring systems early part of next year. Next slide, please. To wrap up, I'll just say that work always continues, and we will continue to apply the sense of urgency. The example presented today provide a snapshot of the work that needs to be complete to move the agency forward towards a data-driven asset management approach. And we are committed to reducing unplanned disruptions for our riders every day. We will continue to return to you quarterly to report on work tracked through the Operations Resiliency Program. So you can expect me to be back in front of this committee with the progress updates in the December Rio meeting. With that, thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much. What questions does the committee have? Board Member George, go ahead.
Thank you. And really not a question. I appreciate the presentation. I'm going to call it more of an acknowledgement. I was really moved today. We got, in the written comments that we received, there's a person who wrote to honestly, this person said she got written up at work in her personnel evaluation as unreliable because she's been late to work a number of times because of service disruptions on the one line. And I just, like, my heart goes out to her. So and what I assume, I think our protocols are to respond to these things. And so I want her to know that staff is working really hard on this, and that there's an entire effort built around service reliability, and that we are taking this seriously, and it's a top priority. And so I appreciate the presentation. We are paying attention to this and understanding, what the causes are, and you're seeking innovative solutions. And so I want to acknowledge that. And I just want to acknowledge her because that's a bummer to have that show up on your personnel evaluation when she's trying to do the right thing and use our service. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member George. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? I just wanted to, I know we've talked about this before. This is just informational. I know that you all do this every time, but I just want to flag, I know some of these things have costs to them. And I am sure you've told me the answer to this before, but at what point and maybe it was you, CEO Constantine, actually, who answered this question before, at what point will we know what our costs are in terms of these fixes?
Well, of course, in order to get the answer to that question, I would just turn right back to Shankar. But the fact is that if anything is beyond the budget that's been approved by the board, we would have to come back to the board if there's a major investment beyond what's already been authorized and appropriated. Do you have a more precise answer?
I think there has been a dedicated funding being allocated for the resiliency effort that will be happening this year, next year, and the following years. One of the things we mentioned during the September meeting, that the work done earlier part of this year as what needs to be done, it's part of a very limited window of investigation. So over the next year, as we look deeper into these things, we are going to learn more about how deep we need to go, how broad we need to go. So when we have more precise information, we'll come back to the board and share it with you.
Great, thank you. And just want to, as Board Member George acknowledged, the more than a hassle, but the problems this is causing our riders, knowing that we are working on it, but also acknowledging that there are costs to that and that we're working on that as well. So really appreciate it. We appreciate getting these updates here, and they matter a lot to our riders, and so they matter a lot to us. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our last. Oh, sorry, Board Member Quinn, go ahead.
I didn't have a question, but I would assume as a part of the answer is, and some of the work that we're doing as a board on the enterprise initiative, which we'll get give us a sense of like costs over time and in different groups? So I can see as we implemented the enterprise, we'll actually know more next year around the operations as well.
That's right, if I may, Madam Chair. That's right. Part of the calculations within the enterprise initiative, identifying and reducing capital costs, figuring out how to drive down long-term operating costs, figuring out how to leverage our financial status to have the most money when we need it, but also identifying those investments that were not previously identified but need to be made for us to deliver reliable service and ultimately more efficient service over time. Some of these investments will also provide long-term operating savings. So that is part of that effort, which will be going on into next year. And I'm looking forward to the work that you're going to do, Shankar, to identify those costs and we can build them into the model. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that question and that answer. All right, moving on to our last presentation, that is the Passenger Impact Program. Kevin Mizuta, our Link Right-of-Way Access Deputy Director, is here to provide the report. Welcome, Kevin. I don't think your mic's on.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Chair Walker and committee members. My name is Kevin Mizuta, Deputy Director of Link Right-of-Way Access, and I'm here today to report on the Passenger Impact Program. Next slide, please. The intent of this program is to ensure that service for our riders remains a priority. We balance the need for construction with the need to serve our passengers by working closely with our operational partners to minimize the impact of planned disruptions. Today's report will provide an update on work that was wrapped up in September and introduce planned upcoming disruptions. The purpose of this presentation is for information only. No board action is expected today. Next slide, please. Looking back at service disruptions that were completed since we last met on September 4th, on the night of September 30th, the power was shut down at Northgate Station for nearby Seattle City Light construction work. The station ran on generator power from 11 p.m. to close. Power to elevators remained off. Shuttles were provided during the closure to maintain ADA access to our facilities. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, weekday nightly single tracking continues to advance construction at Pinehurst Station. The single tracking from 7 p.m. to close at the northern end of the one line is generating up to 12-minute headways system-wide. Weekday single tracking has not been scheduled on days with major events with high attendance. The current set of closures has been extended through mid-November. Crews will replace end-of-life network switches in Beacon Hill Station on October 26th during a day-long service disruption. Passengers will use a bus bridge between Mount Baker and Soto stations during this period, but close to scheduled train headways will be met since we can still pass empty trains through the closed station. On Saturday, November 8th, the same network switch replacement effort will close the Capitol Hill and UW stations until 2 p.m. A bus bridge will be provided from Westlake Station to University District Station. Again, regular train headways will be met since we can still pass empty trains through the closed stations. Next slide, please. The Passenger Impact Program is actively working to coordinate a regularly scheduled monthly maintenance window in the form of extended non-revenue periods. This would result in 3 consecutive early night closures during the week. The location of the service disruptions would rotate to predetermined segments each month. These planned closures will help provide stability in resource management and scheduling for maintenance operations. The first monthly occurrence may launch this month on October 21st through 23rd from Angle Lake Station to Rainier Beach Station. I'd now like to hand over to Deputy CEO Ed Cobine to provide some additional comments on this effort.
All right, thank you, Kevin, if I may, Madam Chair. I just want to underscore the importance of these planned monthly maintenance windows. What this is going to do is this gives us the consistency, the predictability to manage the resources and get our critical work done. We'll be rotating these closures in order to ensure that the impact is spread across the system and not just concentrated in one place. This is a significant step towards maintaining the reliability and safety of our system for our riders. Thank you.
Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation for today. Take on any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you both. What questions do we have? Board Member Bernie.
Thank you so much. Apologies for being in my car, and I'm not driving, don't worry. I'm curious, can you share a little bit about the weekend crazy playoff game, all that's going on, if you want to just give a general update about how we're going to handle all, I've seen ads, and I've seen things on TV, but I just think it's good for the community to know all of the impacts could be and how we're handling all of that. Thanks.
So I'm for this month, October 21st to 23rd, those dates were selected because they avoid all the unknowns with the current playoff situations in multiple sports right now. So so we had to strategically choose the 21st to 23rd because that could move forward regardless.
Great, thank you. Is there any way we can get just a short update about the increase in service? I see someone showing up, so I suspect he has my answer.
Thank you, Board Member Bernie. This is Ben Marks, Acting Executive Director for Service Delivery Operations. We do have ongoing planning efforts taking place with all transit modes to cover service for this weekend. We have confirmation from our operating partners at King County Rail that we'll be providing extra link service that we've become accustomed to at our sporting events like Seahawks, Mariners, and I'll put a plug in for the Reign FC as well on that one. Also, extra sounder service for both the playoff games for the Mariners as well as the Seahawks game on Sunday. We've also had conversations that are taking place with additional STX bus service as well with both PT, CTN, and KCM. Hope that answers the question, but we're hurriedly putting plans in place to have additional service for all modes to cover this weekend, kind of similar to what we had with the hectic sporting events last weekend with UW and Ohio State, as well as Mariners and everything else happening with about 250,000 folks that were attending all matches throughout last weekend. So,
great. Yeah, thank you so much. That answers my question. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you as always. And I am encouraged by that regular service, the regular service monthly maintenance windows, as you were calling them, makes a ton of sense to get those things done. So appreciate that. All right, it sounds like no other questions from the committee. So thank you for the report. We don't have an executive session today. Any other business to come before the committee from committee members? All right, I just want to flag again, the monthly performance report is in your packet, so you can take a look at all that data. And then also want to remind everybody that we are in the middle of the week without driving. I know that a number of my colleagues are participating, and there is another day if you want to participate and try transit to get where you're going without your car. Thank you to the organizers of that event, both locally Disability Rights Washington and America Walks, for making that powerful challenge across the nation this year. Our next Rider Experience and Operations Committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 6th at 1 p.m. The meeting will take place here in the Ruth Fisher Boardroom and virtually via Zoom. The link will be provided on the Sound Transit website as well as the meeting agenda. With that, we are adjourned.